think it's still morning, right? So good morning. We're almost there. We're almost across the finish line. So how many folks are familiar with MATC, or the Mailers Technical Advisory Committee? See a couple of hands in the audience. So oh, it's already up there. Good. So the acronym MATC stands for the Mailers Technical Advisory Committee. And it's really a venue for the Postal Service to share technical information with the mailing industry and facilitates an exchange, if you will. You know, they're telling us what they think is coming up, and it gives us the opportunity to provide feedback and really to help steer the future of some of those services and products. So MATC does have a structure to it. There's an MATC executive committee, and you can see here on this slide the executive committee members. It is comprised of both industry and postal service, and it is quite a commitment from the industry side, if you will. There's a 4-year commitment. You're first elected to industry vice chair, and then industry chair. You go right into the industry chair, and then the immediate past chair is an optional 2-year commitment. And you can see we also have partners on the postal service side. We have a postal service chair, 2 co-vice chairs, and then the program manager. And you can see from the names up on the slide the level of commitment that Quad has to MATC. Both Bob and myself were in MATC leadership for a number of years and are now both on the executive committee. So there is also a leadership team within MATC. MATC, I think I'm going back to 2020 here, was organized first by mail class and then focus area, and we saw some overlap at the class level. So I think Bob actually introduced the change to go to mail shape. So you can see we have industry leaders for the various mail shapes: first class letters, marketing mail letters, periodical flats, marketing mail flats, and bound printed matter flats, and then package services. And you also have focus areas. Currently we have entry, payment, and products, data technology and addressing, and then network operations. And we do have a focus leader specific to those areas on the industry side, but depending upon where they fit within the Postal Service, we also have representatives at the executive level from the Postal Service that are partnering with us. The focus areas do change. Typically they'll change as the chairperson changes. We collaborate with the Postal Service and say, hey, you know, what do we see into the future? Are those key areas that we're going to need to be focusing on at MATC? And as you can see, network operations is up here as one of those key focus areas. So MATC does meet quarterly. Those meetings are in Washington, D.C. I tend to gravitate toward organization and structure, so when I think about MATC, I like to think about the fact that we do have a process or a sequence to it. We start out with an industry pulse call, which is typically about 4 to 5 weeks before those meetings are held. So we're talking with industry only. It's a call that all the industry MATC representatives are invited to, and we're talking about what are the hot topics that we feel we need to have discussed and we need to dive into at the next MATC. Those items can feed into a couple of different types of meetings, the first of those being a pre-MATC webinar. So we're not getting into a lot of detail at the pre-MATC webinar. We'll ask maybe for updates from the Postal Service. It's really kind of some of those topics can be keys to further discussions when we're actually at MATC in Washington. And you'll see on the slide we have a little new indicator up there. Started this year. The MATC leadership team is meeting with the Postmaster General on the Tuesday of MATC right before the open session. So it really gives us, the leadership team, an opportunity for dialogue, you know, representing the industry directly with the Postmaster General. And believe me, we have expressed to the Postmaster General that we are there to partner with him to see the Postal Service succeed. If you think about it, we're the ones preparing the mail that's entering the Postal Service. So if there are changes that he's thinking about, who better to discuss it with than those of us that are preparing the mail, because we can alter how we're preparing that mail that enters to help them be more efficient and succeed. So then there is the MATC open session on Tuesday, which is open to members and the public. And then there are meetings that follow on Wednesday that are specifically for MTAC members. And then we have specific groups that are ongoing throughout the year, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. So we have user groups, work groups, and task teams. A user group, if you will, is just that. So it really typically centers around one of the systems, products, or services from the Postal Service. Folks that are using that particular system or product will meet on a regular basis and talk about how that system is going. Do we need enhancements? Do we need improvements? What are the issues that we're having? Kind of like a think tank, if you will. A work group typically addresses a clearly defined issue. They can go for a long time, as you'll see as I go through some of the groups and tell you a little bit about some of them, but they typically do have a specific end date. And then a task team, if you think of it kind of as a quick hitter, an issue comes up, we need to address it very quickly. Typically a shorter list of participants for those because it's supposed to be focused to hit it and get a quick resolution. So this is just to give you a flavor of the current user groups that are out there. As you can see, a lot of these are system focused. We have one for EVS and the product tracking system, and then you've got FAST and e-induction, informed visibility, addressing, and the user group 7 on mail transport equipment ordering system, or Meteor as most of us refer to it, is a restart, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And some more user groups that are currently going. User group 8, if I recall correctly, somebody asked yesterday or asked Sharon about stats for the different promos. User group 8 is where you would get those. When they meet monthly, they talk about the promos, and for anything that's ongoing or those that have closed, they'll give the statistics for each of those. And you can see we've got user group 11, which is pretty wide. It covers Postal One, e-induction, seamless acceptance, enterprise payment. And then we've got one for informed delivery, business mail or security, and remittance mail. And the user groups typically meet monthly or biweekly. And then we do have some work groups that are currently going on. There's a work group on the package platform. Work group 188 I'll expand on a little bit because that's of particular importance. Work group 188 originally started in 2017, finished up in 2019, and at that point we were talking about what other mail piece designs could we get the Postal Service to test to give us automation discounts. Well, with all of the discussion on paper, we are now asking the Postal Service to go back and work with us to test mail pieces with a different paper stock to see if we can still run, for instance, a basic folded self-mailer that's less than an ounce. The current requirement is that it run on 70-pound paper. Can we run it on 60? Could we run it on 50? So the work group restarted. It's met probably for about a month now, and we've already tested 2 formats. We've got another mail service provider that is going to submit samples to be a basic folded self-mailer to run on 60-pound paper. And previously, when you would submit as a mail service provider to the Postal Service to have a format tested, it was the mail service provider asking for an approval for a specific format. So your competitor may not know about this. We're working together as an industry on this one. So once that format is tested and approved, or even if it's not approved, it's going to go onto a spreadsheet that's going to be out on Postal Pro so that anybody in the industry can take advantage of that and be able to run that format on that alternate paper. So there's a couple of other work groups that are going. We have one on increasing mail and service performance measurement. The enterprise payment system is another group. The implementation, or the building, I should say, and implementation of EPS was work group 173. Started back in 2015 and ran through January of 2019 until that system was up and running and active. And now that folks have been using it, we're starting to see some things that should be changed, some enhancements that we would like. So another work group was started, and it's really reviewing and looking at enhancements for the enterprise payment system. And then we do have a task team that just started up, and that is to look at the service performance measurement rules to see if they still make sense. They've been in place for a long, long time, and should they really be the same, or should they be updated? So now I just wanted to give you a flavor for the hot topics that are coming out of MTAC. What type of things do we discuss? What type of things are moving? So we've talked a lot about paper over the last couple of days. And early on, Bob and I were talking about this. I actually looked it up. July of 2021, last year, we started talking to the Postal Service about the fact that we were going to have problems getting paper. There was a paper shortage. And we took it another step and had the COO from Millcraft come in and speak at the MTAC open session this past April to help facilitate that education. We just spoke about the Workgroup 188 restart. And then another thing that we're facing, or all facing, is really the combination, as we've discussed over the last couple of days, again, about the issues with paper, material, and capacity issues. And some of the thought in the industry is we've had customers come to us, and everybody's out of capacity for the fall. So what could we do? Could we produce mail pieces in June and July and hold them and enter them in October and November? Now we have Quad went to the Postal Service, can't really do it just for Quad. So now we've reached out to our industry partners and said, are you facing those same things? And yes, they are. But we've got to get them to communicate that to the Postal Service so that we can work with them. We don't have approval on this yet, but it is something that the industry as a whole is coming together and talking with the Postal Service about. Mail transport equipment. We all know we had difficulties last fall and into January. Jeff is laughing because we were on a daily basis. How many pallets do we have in each of our facilities? So there were several times that we were down to a few days worth of postal pallets, and we were moving pallets back and forth between facilities so that we wouldn't run out. We were very fortunate that we didn't have to purchase wood pallets. Unfortunately, there were some mail service providers that did have to purchase wood pallets to get them through. So UG7 on Meteor was restarted because we need to understand how can we communicate better with the Postal Service to make sure that we don't face these shortages again. And we found out through the start of this user group that they were already working on some things in Meteor. So let's understand what the timeline is, what's the timeline for the changes, and what's going to be in place so that we don't go through the same thing this fall. We don't want to be having a person spend hours per day monitoring how many pallets we have in each facility. Some other topics, you heard some talk about dashboards. The Postal Service did hear us after a horrible peak in 2020 and put a dashboard together. Unfortunately, they put the dashboard together without a lot of industry input. And now that the dashboard's out there and industry folks are looking at it and trying to use it, we're educating the Postal Service on the fact that it's not really what we were looking for. You can't take your mail tracking data and look at the dashboard today that really is a snapshot in time of those postal facilities and what's happening and compare the two. Just doesn't work. So we had some pretty frank conversations in April, and we'll see what comes out of those and if they're going to steer that information into one of the, or that work into one of the existing user groups, or whether or not we're going to start a new group. Another item is another thing referred to as PEAK. It's the Postal Early Exchange Committee. This group actually meets outside of MTAC, but the request for it and the restart of this group came up through MTAC. It's really, if you think of it as an early vetting group, so the changes that the Postal Service is going to make for any upcoming structural or rate changes, let's talk about them. Let's have that exchange of information with the Postal Service, and let's be able to give feedback prior to that release being finalized. This group does include the MTAC leadership team, reps from Mail.dat, MailXML, the shipping services file, transportation. We're trying to cover all segments of the industry. All members are under an NDA, so we can't come back and widely disseminate that information, but we are able to give them feedback. Undocumented mail is always a fun one. The Postal Service has, I think there were 13 categories of undocumented mail. So undocumented mail is basically the Postal Service reads a barcode. If they can't match it back to EDOC in their system, it's undocumented. It might not really be undocumented, but they see it as undocumented. So they had a good portion. I don't think we ever got a real number. I remember 16% in my head, but 16% of what? Of mail that had a MID, had a single EDOC submitter, and they weren't getting resolution on it. So they are now assigning that to that single EDOC submitter customer registration ID. Not only that, we heard about it on January 20th, and it was implemented on January 23rd. So we were a little surprised. It was implemented with a grace period of May 1st. And as we've started to look at our scorecards and been working through that, we've uncovered a lot of issues, and we've communicated those to the Postal Service. So they've extended the grace period, as you can see, to August 31st. And as a result of the feedback that we've been giving to them, we being the industry, there are some logic changes they are going to be making on how that undock is assigned. So we'll see what that brings. Mail excluded from measurement is another good item that we're working on, Work Group 194. Actually, up through that work group, they've developed a tool where you can go in and you can look and see, again, it's by EDOC submitter CRID, how much of your mail is being excluded from measurement. The tool was just launched. It's available through the Business Customer Gateway. And it's a little daunting when you first look at it. Maureen and Rhonda and I were looking at it this week. And we will definitely have feedback for the Postal Service on it. But again, through that collaboration, it's a tool to try and make sure that we're getting as much of your mail into measurement as possible, because we want to see how it's moving through the Postal Service. And that new task team will be taking a look at those rules. Lastly, a nice positive, I think, is something called the USPS Promotions Portal. So currently, you have to send in an email, or you send in a letter, and you send in a mail piece to try and get approval for one of the promotions. Up through User Group 8, the Postal Service has put together a promotions portal, and it's really going to facilitate the submission of those requests electronically. So you'll log in, it'll be through the Business Customer Gateway, and you can submit a request, you can ask a question, you can actually chat right through that portal with whoever is assigned looking at that particular mail piece. They're going to keep the data for 7 years, so you'll be able to log in, go back and look at all of the requests that you've made. This is supposed to be launched May 23rd. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of that at the National Postal Forum. So we're really excited about that. No more emails, no more not knowing who's looking at it, and they will be expanding the group. Right now you've got, I think, four managers in the promotions group that are actually looking and approving things. That's going to be expanded to the mail piece design analyst group, so they'll have a lot more resources looking at those mail pieces. So lastly, these items I have up here were covered in detail here at the conference. These are also items that we're talking about at MATC. Pricing and freight, we're pointing out to the Postal Service the effects and sometimes the unintended consequences of pricing and how freight can play into that. The USPS network has obviously been a big topic, and I'm sure will be discussed at the National Postal Forum, and we have MATC coming up in July, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussions on it there, as well as possible work groups coming out of that. And then the promotions. We've done a lot of talking about promotions, and those discussions continue in our monthly user group. And that is really the place, if we've got ideas for upcoming promotions, to talk about those. In closing, I do have one final reminder. Anybody that was doing CAPS reporting out of the legacy CAPS system, the self-service reporting, if you will, just ended. But you can go through the Mailing and Shipping Services Center to get those reports. But after April 30th of 2023, that'll be closed down, and you can no longer get any information out of CAPS. So I know I'm giving you a reminder a year in advance, but it is coming. So you might be asking, how can you get involved in MATC? It's an opportunity to get involved, to provide feedback, to bring new ideas. And if you are interested in joining a user group, work group, task team, maybe becoming an MATC rep, or even interested in just a test run, you have to be a member of MATC. You've got to be a member of an association that belongs to MATC, but you can get approval to attend as an approved participant to kind of give it a test run, see what it's like, see if you want to get involved. We would most certainly welcome more mail owner involvement and perspective. I think it's very important for the postage payer to give that perspective as well. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jeff. Thank you very much. What's that? Oh, anybody have any questions? Yes. Yes.
Mailers that submit eligibility for the promotion through the portal, how is information conveyed back, whether you're approved or disapproved?
That will all be electronic, and you will be able to go in and see the status actually in the portal.
So you'll have to check on the portal to see if you're approved as opposed to.
Yeah, I don't know, did we get I'm trying to remember through the demo on that, and I don't know, Judy, do you have any info on the portal? Yeah. We can find out, but my understanding is that it will all be electronic, so you can go in and you can check to see what the status of your approval is.
Are they going to maintain the the typical 4-day response time or
Yes.
lead time? Okay.
Yes. Actually, hopefully that goes down because the number of resources looking at them is increasing, so. Yes. Lights are a killer.
I've been in the portal,
Yes.
and the 4 days is probably not happening, and I think there's still some confusion. I sent some samples for the personalized color trends promo, and then I got a call from an MDA, and she was like, I have no idea what this is. It's just in my queue. So they're still working out some.
Yeah, we'll take that
issues.
back, because my understanding was it's not supposed to officially, are you in the test group? Okay, because it's not supposed to officially launch until the 23rd, so it sounds like there's still some training that's happening.
Yeah, and I'm not, last year, sometimes it was like lightning fast. I'd get a ruling. This year's not been that way, so.
Yep, we'll take that feedback back. You're on UG8, right?
So on the 23rd of May, they'll be launching that portal. Are they considering running kind of redundant processes, keeping the old email submissions and then while incorporating the portal? Or is it strictly, are they cutting off email submission and going to the portal
They haven't really.
exclusively?
Yeah, they haven't really communicated the rollout plan yet, so we'll have to find that out.
Because that's kind of close to the beginning of,
Yes,
some of the major promotions that they're
yes,
starting.
yeah, we'll see what we can find out there.
Thank you.
Lisa, you want to, got a question that I ask you all the time, so you know what I'm going to ask about MTE, which is, yeah, I'm laughing right now. I wasn't laughing all last fall. So the question is, do you feel, or does the work group feel that we've solved the MTE network problem? Or is it just because we're slower right now, it's not surfacing? I mean, most of the supply chain does not work well right now with just-in-time, and MTE is still built off of just-in-time. And I'm very comfortable with where we're at now, but we're using half the pallets that, I mean, we're going through 30, 40,000. You were with us last fall.
Yep.
Just in Wisconsin a week.
Yep.
What is your feel, or what is the group's feeling on how far along we are on making sure that doesn't happen again?
That's a loaded question. I had a very high frustration level. I'm on the user group. Very high frustration level because, number one, I'm a list person. So if we're going to talk about issues, we should be making an action item list. Somebody should be assigned. We should be doing follow through to make sure those items are getting rectified. We just yesterday, because they were supposed to meet yesterday, but it got canceled, got the action item list. I have not had a chance to take a look at it yet. I don't have a high confidence level that the issues are fixed. I think there's been a lot of discussion going on, but I want to see an action plan, and I want to understand from a timeline perspective, as I said, when I was talking about the group, the Postal Service indicated that they had already been working on things. They'd already had things in motion for Meteor to try and improve things. Well, show me what the release timeframes are for that. Let's see what's going to be in place before the fall. They're talking about things like mailers that have standing orders forcing them to report inventory or they're going to cancel your standing orders. That's not going to fix the problem. So I think we have a ways to go.
Can I answer?
Sure. Maybe you'll be more optimistic than I am.
Yeah, no. So, yeah, I am not yet convinced that we have figured out what the real core issue was last year and that it won't happen again, but it's something that we're going to continue to apply pressure on. It is interesting because one of the things that the Postal Service did find is 11,000 of their pallets sitting at a recycling center in California. It's just like, how in the heck did they get there? That's like, you can get like 880 pallets on a semi-load. So that's like 10 or 11 semi-loads of pallets sitting at a recycling center. It's just like, what in the world is going on? So there's got to be a better way of tracking it. I think their solution near term is going to be purchase brute force
Right,
through it,
right.
which, I mean, can work, but it's not the most efficient.
But the positive is that we're having regular conversation about it and that we are continuing to push. I mean, we're in May. We weren't having these conversations last May. So if nothing else, there's a positive in that we're already having the conversations about it and they already understand what we're looking for, and that we don't want to be in the same scenario of bugging them all day long, every day. So, anybody else? Okay, now I'll really turn it back over to you, Don.